So are we ready to start?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any housekeeping matters that we should address, claimant?
None from our end, thank you.
Respondent?
Neither, thank you very much.
Just a matter that the tribunal wishes to address. It is not excluded that we continue through tomorrow, but it is not excluded either that we finish by tonight. It would be good if you could, in the course of the day, contact each other with respect to the next steps in the proceedings, namely post-hearing briefs, the deadlines for the briefs, whether 1 round or 2 round, possibly limitation of pages, and also how to deal with the exception within that phase of the proceedings. Ideally, we would like you to come up with a joint proposal, but we are of course ready to discuss this in due course after having heard the experts. So this is just a message from our side. We will then start with the witnesses of today. If I'm correct, we will start with Mr. Dickinson and Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Ruiz, I suppose this is you. So good morning. Please take a seat. And good morning, Mr. Dickinson. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you. Good
Okay,
morning.
we can hear you too well, I would say. Could we
Okay.
lower the tone a little bit? Okay, so I would ask each of you to read for the record the declaration that you should have in front of you.
Go ahead, Clay.
Okay. My expert declaration, I solemnly declare upon my honor and conscience that my statement will be in accordance with my sincere beliefs.
I solemnly declare upon my honor and conscience that my statement will be in accordance with my sincere belief.
Thank you very much. Now we invite you and give you the floor to make your presentation.
Okay. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to share the screen. Hopefully you all can see this, can you?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning, Tribunal, and thank you very much for the opportunity to give this presentation, even if it is virtual. I have a lot of material to cover in a short period of time, so I'm going to get right to it. I will be covering the hospitality aspect of the work that Jones Lang LaSalle did in connection with this matter. Basically, JLL, with regard to the hospitality piece, our instructions were pretty specific, and that was not necessarily to compare a market valuation or whatever, but rather to compile a list of market transactions data relevant to the hotel component of their client's portfolio of real estate projects in Colombia. And as such, we had to look from properties kind of ranging from upscale, mixed-use resort-type properties to luxury lifestyle mixed-use resort properties. In addition, we were asked to comment on some of Dr. Hearn's report, the statements in Dr. Hearn's reports, as well as the CBRE report. Very briefly, a little bit about myself. I've got almost 50 years of experience now across almost every aspect of the hospitality industry. I got a lot of white hair, as you can probably see. There's not a lot of benefits with that white hair, but I think one of them is perspective, especially in a region as dynamic and changing as the Caribbean, Mexico, Latin America region. To be able to see the way the region has evolved over the arc of 4 decades, I think allows for some pretty interesting insights. I have spent, of my 40 years, more than 25 focused in the Caribbean, Mexico, and Latin America, including the last 12 as a managing director of Jones Lang LaSalle's Hotels and Hospitality Group and the Valuation Advisory Services Group for the Caribbean, Latin America region. I've personally been involved in projects in Colombia since about 2008. Now, I would estimate somewhere between 25 or 30 projects there. In order to sort of understand our approach to finding the comparable market transactions, I just thought it was very sort of important to give a high level overview of the evolution of Colombia's lodging market. There's sort of Colombia's lodging market before 2002 and then after 2002. Before 2002, sort of a period of a lot of conflict and whatnot, you actually had a decrease of about 500,000 international visitors between, say, 1993 and 2002. But it started transitioning around 2002 up until around 2008. As we started to get some macroeconomic stability, there was a definite focus on trying to crack down on security and things like that. And then really it began to gain steam in the very latter part of the first decade of the new millennium. And I think that, this is because there was trust in the macroeconomic stability. There was trust in the security. The peace accord looked like it was imminent. And there was a very targeted fiscal policy in Colombia to try to stimulate growth of the tourism and hospitality industry. And if you look at this timeline sort of there below, you'll see that really starting again toward the latter part of the decade, a lot of global hotel chains started coming into the country. And by the time we got to just up to the pandemic, 2019, I mean, you had 3 million international tourist arrivals, and Colombia had really kind of emerged as an important regional international tourism destination. Having said that, in capital intensive industries like the hospitality industry, the maturity and liquidity in the capital markets is very important. And in Colombia, as in a lot of Latin American countries, there's kind of a lack of long-term debt, and there's a lot of stratified ownership structures as a result, and that has actually retarded the development of an active transactions market in Colombia, because institutional investors typically don't like the prospect of having to come in and maybe negotiate with dozens or potentially even hundreds of individual shareholders that might own a hotel. We think also it's important to really understand, the Charlie Hotel. I mean, it was going to be sort of the brand for the proposed portfolio, and really the impact that the hotel had when it first entered the scene in 2011. I mean, it was emblematic of an increasing sophistication of the industry in Colombia. There were some other lifestyle type boutique hotels, the Bog Hotel in Colombia that came in around the same time, but they did not have the same impact that the Charlie had in terms of creating a unique atmosphere. And I think the performance of the Charlie, it has consistently been the market leader when you compare its actual average daily rates with the aggregate of upscale and above markets, not only in Medellin, but also in Colombia and Cartagena, which is notoriously the highest rated market in the country. And so, the success of lifestyle hotels elsewhere in the world would indicate that the Charlie was a concept that could work well in other markets throughout Colombia. I'm not going to get deep into our overall methodology because you have both of our reports, and I understand it's a matter of the record. But I wanted to state that, of course, when we were looking at the transactions, we started with Colombia, and we could identify no comparable hotel transactions for this time frame of interest, basically 2014-15 to 2019, for some of the reasons that had been previously mentioned with regard to capital market illiquidity generally. So what do we do? Generally, it's a very common practice in the industry, and especially if you're dealing with emerging, relatively illiquid capital markets, you sort of cast a wider net and to expand our search for comparable transactions to competitive and or comparable markets outside Colombia. Colombia as a country, if a visitor is thinking about going there, they may well think, well, maybe I'll go to Costa Rica, or maybe the Dominican Republic, Mexico, elsewhere in South America. And so we looked at the Caribbean, Mexico, and sort of the Caribbean rim and the Latin America market as comparable. We were fully cognizant that that would probably produce a greater range, a little bit more variability, both in the nature of the markets and in the comparator assets. But we were confident that in the aggregate, some meaningful results would be produced. We got the comparable transactions data from two primary sources, JLL, We have a proprietary database of transactions, including some data that might not otherwise be available. And then we have a subscription to Real Capital Analytics, which is a global commercial provider of data, both for general commercial transactions and the hospitality industry. And this slide here really is sort of a summary of everything that we did find out. And we believe at the end of the day, some reasonable indicative values emerged from our analysis. Specifically, at about $205,000 per key, we consider that to be a reasonable indication of market value for upscale lifestyle mixed-use or resort hotels in the Caribbean and the Latin America region, including in Colombia. And that at about $519,000 per key, we consider that to be a reasonable indication of the market value of luxury lifestyle mixed-use and resort hotels in the Caribbean and the Latin America region, including in Colombia. And then finally, that overall in the aggregate, around $414,000 per key is considered to be a reasonable indication of market value for a portfolio of upscale to luxury lifestyle mixed-use resort hotels in the Caribbean and Latin America region, including in Colombia. So we were asked also, as I mentioned, to some of CBRE comments. I've kind of summarized them all here together. It basically goes to the point of whether the Charlie Hotel can really be characterized as a luxury hotel or not. They mentioned that they consider the Charlie brand does not comply with luxury positioning, as it's not a Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton, 50 square meter rooms, 5 fixture bathrooms, high-end finishes, etc. And that there's a little comment here about the phase 1 of the Tierra Bomba in terms of the furnitures, fixtures, and equipment that at about $32,000 per key is above the full service, which applies to the hotel brand as Charlie that they had mentioned. According to the HVS survey, is around $29,000 per key. I'll deal with that one right away. In my opinion, it's a distinction without a difference. Yes, HVS, it is kind of a benchmark survey. It's in the United States, but it's at a very, very high level. And there's really not a material difference between $32,000 and $29,000 per room. And probably if you're looking at a luxury lifestyle hotel in a place like Tierra Bomba, there's going to be a lot of imported material. So that would be a conservative number at any rate. Going down a little further on page 47, they talk about only well-known or outstanding projects have a price premium. Regardless of the alleged success of the Charlie brand, it cannot be categorized as a luxury brand either. So both of these comments relate to the legitimacy of the Charlie's claim to be a luxury property. We felt it was very necessary, very quickly, to try to go over lifestyle hotels because it's really had a changing impact on the industry overall. The fact that the hallmarks of most legacy brands, think Marriott, Sheraton, Hilton, or whatever, consistent quality of physical facilities, cleanliness, predictable good service, these have now become sort of minimum standards. It's not that they're not important, they're table stakes. And lifestyle hotels have gained prominence over the past 20 to 25 years, partially due to their ability to evolve alongside travelers' ever-changing needs and desires. And modern travelers, they don't really want cookie-cutter hotels anymore. They want those table stakes, but they're looking for an authentic experience, an authentic ambiance that reflects the unique aspects of the location where the hotel is located. More and more, they want the action outside the hotel room, vibrant lounges, innovative cocktails, notable cuisine, and even like surprisingly personalized service. This is what makes lifestyle hotels more than just a hotel experience, but rather a destination within a destination if it's done right. And the success of the lifestyle concept is evidenced by the fact that today, most major hotel brands have at least one soft brand that they use to bring in a lot of independent lifestyle type hotels. And as they say, that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. A lot of these pioneer lifestyle brands, Thompson, Delano, Kimpton, etc. Thompson's now Hyatt. The Delano and the SLS are part of the Accor brand. Kimpton is owned by Intercontinental Hotels Corporation. And of course, AC Hotels is owned by Marriott. So they've either acquired these brands or they've developed soft brands and their own lifestyle hard brands. This is a trend that is not only in the mature markets, but it's also in Latin America. Faena started in Buenos Aires, moved to Miami Beach, has now been acquired and is part of Accor. Selena started in Panama, grew exponentially, and now is going worldwide and is about to do a major IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. So the question kind of remains, could this have been the future of the Charlie? So we believe that the Charlie Hotel, it is a luxury hotel because, number one, STR, which is the global leader in basically hotel data for the hospitality industry worldwide, does not determine a hotel's class by its physical features. Rather, a hotel's class is based on the average daily rate in relation to the hotels in their proximity. And the STR categorizes the Charlie Hotel as an independent luxury hotel in their database. With the growth of experience-based lifestyle hotels, luxury is increasingly defined by the price premium it can achieve and the experience it can deliver rather than the nature of its facilities. You know, even traditional luxury brands like the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton or the Mandarin Oriental are moving toward what they call sort of authentic luxury, which is based more upon curated experiences and flexibility than it is on marble floors and gold-plated fixtures, white glove service, and sort of over-the-top opulence. The notion that you have to have a certain brand awareness, virtually every single lifestyle brand has been successful without existing brand awareness before opening. Indeed, that's kind of the hallmark of a good lifestyle hotel. Whisper campaigns, and then they open with a bang. Public relations is what these guys do best. And that every single lifestyle brand started out as a single hotel, that because it was able to establish a sense of place and drive RevPAR premiums and outsized profits by becoming sort of the place to be seen, both in person and online through social media. Moving to some of Hearn's comments, this notion that that using fully operating comparators is conceptually irrelevant. Honestly, I'm a little bit mystified by this because what else would one use if one were trying to come up with a value? You know, whether a hotel is existing or whether it's proposed, it routinely, these are valued on the basis of fully operational comparator. This is to substantiate the assumptions behind a discounted cash flow analysis or a prospective value based upon the analysis of comparable sales. The basic assumption is that these are going concerns and that investors, they're buying cash flow in addition to not just real estate. To think that the value of projects that are not yet operational or only partially built is not based on really how much costs have been deployed so far. This would be a minimum value at best, and at worst, it could be a negative value. Because if you have a failed project and it's half completed, a new buyer either has to go with what they had, or they're going to have to incur the cost of getting rid of those improvements that have been put in the ground. So for this reason, using fully operational hotels as comparators is not only necessary, but it's absolutely the correct approach. And then dealing a little bit with Dr. Hearn's claim that, the hotels are not comparable to BRGs in any case. And they talk about, the fact that some of these are located in destinations. They use Mexico as an example, which is, lower risk country and has a stronger hospitality segment. And then he mentions here that evidence showing that these comparator hotels charge multiple times higher room rates than five-star hotels, including the claimant's luxury hotel. As I previously stated, we knew that going on Colombia was going to produce more variability in the markets themselves and in the assets, but that's not a reason to not follow what's a very common practice. Moreover, we believe that reasonable results were produced. Hearn's methodology for evidence of much higher room rates is questionable at best, because to try to pick a specific moment in time and just On June 19th, the rate at the Four Seasons Papagayo was $2,300. With today's revenue management systems, that's almost worthless information. You could do it a week later or 2 days before, and it could end up being $600. It's sort of the same concept as sitting next to someone on an airplane. You pay $200 for your ticket, and the other person paid $2,000. There's a lot of algorithms, and these prices are dynamic. They're changing all of the time. And it does not necessarily follow that the value per room should be correspondingly higher than the claimant's hotels. Using Hearn's own example of Mexico to illustrate the point, in Mexico, it produced comparator sales transactions for both upscale and luxury assets that were significantly above and below the regional averages. And as far as the notion that risk, that Mexico's less risk is not a static concept. If you go back to Mexico in 2009, 2010, just about a decade ago, it was an investment pariah. Between H1N1 and the narco violence in Mexico at the time, the effect of the Great Recession on Mexico, investing in Mexican hospitality may well have been perceived as being higher risk at that time than investing in hospitality in Colombia. And, there's a lot of other elements that come with risk. Other markets are either, equal or greater risk than Colombia due to the lack of volume or the lack of air accessibility or very high operating costs and low productivity, reliance on a single market source. All of these can affect the relative risk and positioning of a market, especially in a region such as the one that we used. And lastly, EBITDA per key is a lot more important than revenue per key when we're trying to determine price and value. And I'm going to conclude with talking about, Hearn talked about EBITDA margins. It continues to be my opinion that to use such general EBITDA margins as the average EBITDA of a publicly traded global hotel company, Marriott or a Hilton or something like that, when you're talking about something as specific as the EBITDA margin of a specific hotel or a specific portfolio of hotels, is simply the wrong way to go about doing it. EBITDA tends to be very idiosyncratic to the property or to the portfolio. If, for example, I wanted to try to determine what would be a reasonable EBITDA for, say, the Charlie in Medellin, I would be a lot more concerned about picking properties that are they using the same accounting principles? Is it essentially the same size and the same positioning? Is the food and beverage operation very, very similar? Is it staffed very similarly? Are the overall cost in line? And that would be more important than the EBITDA margin of, say, Hilton hotels globally. I would not, for certain, have used, for example, the Irotama Hotel, which is one of the ones that Dr. Hearn used in comparing the Colombian luxury EBITDA margins, because I know that hotel very well, and I know for a fact that they do not use the uniform system of accounts for the lodging industry. So I have no idea how they're accounting for their revenues, how they're accounting for their expenses, their capital expenditures, and whatnot. I do not know whether I'm comparing apples to apples. And equally importantly, from an operation standpoint, the Irotama has nothing to do with the nature of the operations at a hotel like the Charlie. So it's an absolutely horrible example to use. And so with that, I know I had to speak quickly. I hope I was able to make myself understood, and I'm going to turn it over to Francisco.
Hello, my name is Francisco Ruiz. I am the Vice President for Research, Consulting, and Capital Markets in JLL Colombia. And I'll make some points that will illustrate, I guess, where our numbers come from and why they would be different from the respondents. So next, please, Clay. I want to start from the scope, because I think this is where everything starts to diverge. Our scope was to do a complete evaluation of comparable real estate projects relevant to the claimant's projects in Colombia. Based on those valuations done in 2019, we had to go back and forward to produce historical and projected data, both on those sales prices, but also on construction costs. Next. And at this point, I want to invite the tribunal to have these images in mind, because this is the part of the information we were provided with. These were the units we were evaluating, not any high-end property, but these very exclusive luxury units, and not just any high-end property. Next, the same with the other projects. Next. So before we dive into the details, I just wanted to explain how the Colombian market is not as transparent as other markets in the US or Europe, where you can get a lot more information on selling prices. It's not completely opaque. There's definitely third-party data providers, but if you want to produce accurate, relevant, and numbers that make sense, you have to be very careful on how you handle the data, and not just and go further than just what you can get from a third-party provider. Next. So what were our sources and methodology and results? So as I mentioned, we did rely on a third-party provider, Galería Inmobiliaria, which we believe is the best one. I'll explain why. But we didn't stop there. We also leverage our network of contacts across the different markets. And we also relied on information from online sites, postings, both national level, but also market-specific sites that we found. Finally, for our projections and to produce historical data, we relied to some degree on the National Statistics Department's information. Next. Well, this is in our report. I don't want to go into great detail, but as I mentioned, we first did a comparison method where we we cast a wide net to really try to come up with the best information possible, and based on that, run our comparison. I'll explain that a little later, and then go back and forth using basically statistical and econometric methods to produce our output matrix. Next. But I'll refer to this shortly. Next. So at the end, our end results were prices, sell price estimates, and next, construction costs estimates. For these, we also went through a very thorough process where we sat down with a specialized construction consultancy that specializes in budgeting for construction projects. We shared the same information we were using with for our valuations, so that they could have a very clear sense of what they were pricing. They build their numbers from the bottom up. They get quotes for inputs. They account for transportation costs from the sourcing of the materials to the construction site and so forth, so that they can provide as accurate a number as possible. Next. So we were asked by council to provide some comments on both CBRE and Dr. Hearn's report in what refers to the real estate data. So as I mentioned, our methodology differs because we use multiple sources and try to go at the very micro level. CBRE remain at a very high level database analysis and compared with some developer survey they conducted. And I guess the biggest difference will be the comparability. We made sure that the prices we provided were for comparable projects and not just a wide range of high-end projects. Next. I believe the best way to understand this is to basically understand a little more what the market looks like when you go down into the detail. So this is an histogram of prices and frequency. How frequent are the data points for each price bracket? So as you can see, the Colombian market is skewed towards low income and middle income, or units for low income and middle income families. And this is normal, I guess. In Europe, you would have a more symmetrical distribution, but in Colombia, it's definitely skewed. If you are talking about luxury, then you have to go towards the right of that distribution. A quick note, stratum, which is often used in many analyses, you can see there's a lot of overlap between price ranges, so you have to be very careful when you bring that into your analysis. Next. So I tried to do a very stylized explanation of what is the main difference, so you get a clear sense of what we're talking about.
I have to interrupt.
We've lost connection, the recording has stopped, and the interpreters will not be able to hear.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ruiz, we have to solve this technical problem.
It's a technical issue.
I'm going to have to get out of there, and then now
We can hear you.
Your mic is muted now, sir. That's good. Mr. President, I don't know if we can ask the expert to assume
Do you
or go
need
back
me
a
to?
little bit.
Yes, say something.
Hello, yes. Hello, probando. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, you may resume.
Otra vez.
You may resume your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So, as I was saying, we prepared this diagram to illustrate the point, and you get a very clear sense of what the root difference is. So next, so taking into account this distribution, the keys here is to remember how it is distributed. So how did we go about our work? We first casting this wide drag net to identify the most comparable projects. Next, we identified a few and then run some adjustment criteria to make them as close as possible to the claimant's projects. To give you a sense, if I am evaluating a house in a suburb in the US and the house next door is for sale, that is a very valuable data point. But if that house has a pool, then I have to adjust for that factor to make sure that is comparable, and that price can be used to assess the price of the value of the property I'm valuing. So we did that with every project, and that's how we got our results. What CBRE did, next Clay, was to use a database with a section of the data. They just drew a line and run an average on that section of the data. That results in an average that next will be skewed towards the lower part. Why? Because there's just more data the further down you go on prices. So that is why you will see a consistent difference towards the lower part of the values in CBRE's report. And next, if you use surveys, then that is even more acute, because when you ask someone for a unit on beyond a certain threshold, the person will automatically assume we're talking about that threshold, and then results will be even more biased towards the bottom. As I mentioned, we believe our data source is better just because they rely heavily on fieldwork and conduct a thorough quality assurance process. That said, none of these are perfect. As I mentioned, we have to go outside just the data to make sure we got a very clear picture of what these markets look like. Next. So what we did to illustrate this was to look at CBRE sample and take one project on this lower end to give you a sense of what this looks like. Next. So what we found was, previous one. There were a lot of projects that, even though they are high end on the left, these are high rise, high density, very small units that cannot be compared to the claimant's projects. Why? Because the claimant's projects are more to the right of my diagram. So this is why when you're pricing on this side, you include a lot of data points on this other side, you will have a skewed result. Same with these are just examples we drew from the database. Next, Clay, we then went out and Googled these projects to see what they looked like. So we realized that you cannot compare these with nice amenities, but definitely not comparable to these high-end projects that have these hotels with great amenities and luxury feel to them. Next. No, next. Go ahead, Clay, please. Next, next, next. There you go. Oh, previous one. Okay, so some of the numbers in CBRE report caught our attention because they were just different from our take on the market, what our take on the market is. We went back and looked at their data and rerun their numbers for these Cartagena single-family units. Then we found the exact same number to make sure that we were accurately rebuilding or reconstructing their calculations, and we realized they were basing their number on only 4 projects. 2 of them had huge issues, well, major problems. Next, one was a failed project, basically on a fire sale. That project was canceled in 2018, and the other one had just erroneous data. The same project on the same date had almost 3 times higher price in Galería Inmobiliaria's database. So I think this was just a mistake in the database. This is just to say you have to be very careful when you run your numbers because you will get nonsensical results if you're not very careful. Next.
Mr. Ruiz,
I have to.
your time is over, so please
I'll hurry up.
accelerate.
I'll hurry up. Okay, this is just to show that there's a difference between the CBRE and JLL, consistently lower. Next. Then we did a review of Dr. Hearn. The first one is we reviewed Dr. Hearn's list for construction companies. They are indeed the biggest companies in Colombia. What Dr. Hearn fails to understand about the real estate Colombian market is that it focuses mostly on social housing. These construction companies have a large share of their business in the social housing market. And that is a market of volume, not of big profits and value added. So probably their profits will be much lower than that of a smaller, high-end, luxury-oriented developer. Next. There's also the failure risk data. Dr. Hearn raises a couple of reasonable points, although the way he reran the numbers is completely off, and I'll explain briefly. Next. We basically took into account almost all of his comments to see what that would look like, and the failure rate from our initial estimate would go up if we incorporate most of Dr. Hearn's comments up until to 19.1, which is still below the average failure rate in the US. Next. Also, the comment on Dr. Hearn really confused us because he's saying that the failure rate of projects in Medellin and Cartagena could go up to 85%, and that would be basically an Armageddon in a market. If 85% of projects are failing, then you would see that, and that is not consistent with what you see when you go to these markets. So we went back and looked at how he conducted his calculations. And the problem was that he basically threw off 31% of projects in the case of Medellin and 42% in the case of Cartagena. When we did this, we corrected for Dr. Hearn's point, which we believe, again, it was reasonable, but we didn't overdo it in a way that would skew the numbers and get 100% failure, as you can see in Dr. Hearn's numbers in the Excel. Next. Finally, this is there's the speed of sales. Dr. Hearn refers to CBRE's averages. And again, these numbers may be correct in the sense that they are averages run in an Excel spreadsheet, but they fail to account how the market works. These databases are updated monthly, so you get a lot of months. If you look at how successful projects sell, you get most of the sales happen in the first months, the first year especially, and then they decrease. They are successful, they are built, but they stay in the market for many years. Why? Because every project has a few units that are not desirable. Think of a very nice building, luxury building by the sea, there's always an apartment that looks to the dumpster that is small and no one wants. Every project has some of those units. So these projects will remain in the market and will mark a 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 for many months throughout years. So when you run an average, then you get the numbers that next you can see in CBRE's report that, again, really make no sense, and they're not an accurate or cannot help you understand how a project would behave. Because again, we ran the numbers with CBRE's data, and we noticed and we established that projects would take approximately a year, selling every month approximately 5% of their units, and then the number of sales would drop. So I don't know if this was clear, but they're basically diluting sales figures by taking this long run view. If you use that number, then no project would have ever been built in Colombia, selling 0.1 units per month. That is one a year. That would take 10 years to build a 10-unit house building. So we try to really understand how they did these numbers to illustrate and come up with better numbers that can be more useful to this analysis.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ruiz. Who will be in charge of the cross-examination?
It will be Ms. Ripko Gorman who will do the cross-examination. I just know that we had an additional 10 minutes, and we assume that our experts would be also given the additional 10 minutes. And if I may simply ask the technical staff if we could have a switch of the screen so that we can have the expert right in front of us, because it's like too far off.
Would that be possible, operator?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Perfect.
Mr. President, from the back here, can we just stop for 1 minute? 1 minute.
Sure.
Thank you.
David, good?
Almost. I was starting a new file. Sorry.
Mr. President and members of the tribunal, we've sent Mr. Dickinson a sealed envelope with his reports. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. If it's okay, I'll just address one procedural thing. Mr. Dickinson has an envelope, a sealed envelope with his reports. So if it's okay with Respondents' Council, he can open it up and take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ripko, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Dickinson. Good morning, Mr. Ruiz. My name is Yael Ripko. I represent the Republic of Colombia in this arbitration, and I will be addressing some questions to you regarding your reports.
Could you kindly put your microphone
Sure.
closer?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is it better now? Both of you have before you 2 reports, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And the first one is named Final Report, Summary of Results and Methodology, and it was presented by GLL to Gibson Dunn on 10 June 2020. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Have you signed this report?
We didn't.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Did you draft it, or was it someone else?
It was a team effort, but we reviewed everything. I don't know, Clay, if you want to go.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
So you take responsibility for the content of the statement, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And then on 16 September 2021, you issued a second report, which is called Replies to Comments about JLL Inputs Included in Expert Report by Dr. Hearn. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And this time you did sign the report, correct?
Yes.
Is there anything you would like to amend about any of these reports?
No.
No.
So you stand by your written reports, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Great, thank you. I first want to check slide 34 and 35 of your presentation.
Can you put it up? Is it here?
No, it's not there. It's your presentation.
No. Okay.
You don't have it?
No. Oh, do I have it?
I think we are having a technical problem because it should be.
No, Clay has it on his screen, but yeah.
It's supposed to be on
I'm
screen?
getting it. Yeah, sorry.
No, but it should.
$34? Can you stop?
I don't know if-
Clay, I think you need to stop sharing your screen, or
Sorry.
Do you want me to stop sharing it, or can you all see it now?
yes, please.
Okay, that's slide 34, I believe.
Thank you. That's it. Before I go on with the questions, before I go on with the questions, you're probably aware that pursuant to procedural order number 10, each one of you is supposed to answer questions regarding the scope of the report that you were taking care of, correct?
Yes.
So I'll be addressing questions to each one of you, and please, you need to respond one by one. Whoever is addressed the question has to reply. You cannot comment on each other's question or supplement each other's answers. So I will start now, and this is slide 34, and this was, the question is for you, Mr. Ruiz. On the right side of this slide, we have a picture, or what seems to be an image of the Meritage project. This is a computer generated.
Yes.
This does not exist in reality, correct?
No.
Now I want to go to the left side of this slide, where you represent that CBRE sample is BioCity grant.
Yes.
Did you take this from CBRS report?
The picture or the name of the project?
Either.
So, as I mentioned, we went through the CBRE database. We filtered by the criteria stated on the report, and we looked at the list of projects. And we just took one to illustrate how these projects on the lower end of the high end would look like. We just wanted to, and then we did a Google search and found this in the developer's website or broker's website.
I don't think this was my question. My question was, is CBRE identifying the project they refer to as BioCity grant? Or is it your assumption that CBRE is referring to BioCity
This
grant?
was based on our analysis of their numbers.
So it's your assumption. CBRE never says it's BioCity grant. You are just assuming that CBRE is referring to BioCity grant.
No, I don't think I am assuming. Again, I filtered CBRE's database, and given their criteria, we found a list of, we just found a list. So I don't know if I'm assuming or just, I don't know. I don't think
Because
that's an
CBRE
assumption.
will tell us later that the project they are referring to is not BioCity
Oh,
grant. But
okay.
I just wanted to state for the record that it is not, and that these pictures are not in the record.
These pictures are not in the record.
Thank you for
Yes.
that. I would like to go now to your slide 24.
Yes. Oh, he's still sharing his
Mr.
screen?
Dickinson, could you please stop sharing your screen because we need to
Oh,
take
sure.
control.
Okay.
Yeah, someone else will do it, Clay.
Very good. I'm done.
So apology. I think we may move on. This is your slide 24,
Yes.
and you provide the sale price estimates for different projects for 2017, correct?
Yes.
And you refer there to your page 44 or of your first report. Do you? It's down there where you list the sources.
Yes.
So actually, I want you to go to page 44 of your first report. It's in tab 5 of the cross bundle.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to go first to Crystal Lakes.
Crystal Lakes, okay.
And in your slide 24 for Crystal Lakes,
Yeah.
you state that the price of houses is 4,056,118 Colombian pesos per square meters, and the price of apartments is 3,395,362 Colombian pesos per square meter, correct?
Yes.
Now, if you go to your report and you see for 2017, for the same project, Crystal Lake, you have for houses 5,174,845, and for apartments 4,524,560. Is that correct?
Yes.
So this means that in your slide 24 you have revised the price downwards by over 1 million Colombian pesos per square meters, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I apologize. Just copy paste error, clerical error. You're right.
Okay, then maybe there's another clerical error. If we go to Tierra Bomba, for the apartments, you have in your page 44, you have 11,154,321
Oof.
Colombian pesos per square meters, correct?
Yeah.
And for houses, you have 13,470,346, correct?
You are correct, yes.
Now, if you go again to your slide 24, for Tierra Bomba houses, you have 8,093,211, correct?
Yeah.
And for apartments, you have 7,758,540, correct?
Yes.
And that's a difference of over 5 million Colombian pesos.
Yes.
Is that also a clerical error?
Yeah. Yes. Can I explain?
Please.
Yes. This was just a recap, copy pasting results. I apologize for not reviewing this. We stand by our original numbers in our report. I apologize.
So we can scrap this slide from the
Yes.
presentation and from the record.
Yes.
Thank you. So now I would like to go to your slide 41.
Yes.
Sorry. And you explained that Dr. Hearn had made a couple of reasonable points and that you therefore reviewed your failure rate, correct?
Yes.
So if you go to tab 7, for everyone's convenience, I included the relevant paragraphs of Dr. Hearn's report. And he lists, for example, do you have it there? It's tab 7. So this is Appendix F of Dr. Hearn's second report. And there, as you said, he lists a number of problems that he identified in your failure rate calculations. So, for example, one of them was that when the Galería Inmobiliaria lists a project as non-applicable, NA, that there's no information, you had put it as a successful project, whereas it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a successful project, and you adjusted your numbers.
Yes.
Also for the stratum, you adjusted the numbers, and we see it on this in your slide 41.
No.
That
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
that what I meant is that Dr. Hearn had criticized in paragraph 293 of his report that in your failure rate calculation you had included projects classified as stratum 4 to 6, but now you revise it to include only stratum 6.
Yeah, we did not revise, and we not necessarily agree with that comment. We just ran the numbers to see what they would look like, because at the end they don't make that much of a difference. But that's why in my presentation, if you go to my presentation, I marked that in yellow. Assuming that we take everything into consideration, failure rate goes up until 19%.
Well, I would say that when it doubles from 10 to 19, it's kind of a significant difference, isn't it?
It is a significant difference, but actually the more reasonable comments make the failure rate go up to 15%. But if you want to narrow the analysis, because this was not what we were asked to do initially, but if you want to narrow the analysis like Dr. Hearn is suggesting, then you go to 19%.
Thank you. And also in paragraph 294 of his report, second report, Dr. Hearn criticized that your rates were artificially low because you had not taken into account that some projects that are still in progress may fail in the future, correct?
Correct.
And that you also adjusted in your slide 41.
That is correct.
So I understand that you consider that a project may still fail even if it has started already. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Great, thank you. And
Well, sorry. Started to pre-sale. That doesn't mean started construction, but yes. That was a project that has been launched when it's on the market.
so when it has started pre-sale, it can still fail.
Yes.
And when it has started construction, can it fail?
No, that is well, it could, should something extraordinary happen, but usually construction does not start until a project reaches equilibrium point.
What if after reaching equilibrium point, the financing dries up for whatever reason? Can the project still fail?
I believe the equilibrium point is determined by is the number of sales that can pay for the as its name states, the break even of the project.
Thank you. Now, there's one more criticism that Dr. Hearn made, and it's on paragraph 291, and it is that you have not really considered the trends in failure rates, correct?
Allow me to read this. Oh, yeah, I remember this.
So if you see figure F2 on page 130 of the second report of Dr. Hearn, you would see that the failure rate has a significantly increasing trend towards 2017 and increasing even like a lot towards 2021, correct?
Yes, these were the numbers, and I'm sorry because I have to flew through my presentation, but these are the numbers that we say we believe are nonsensical. If you think that every project in 2021 in all cities of Colombia have failed, that just shows an utter lack of understanding about the real estate market. You cannot, this would be worse than 2008 here in the US. This is absolute collapse, every project failing. So this is why we meant that you have to be very careful when how you treat the data. Dr. Hearn had some reasonable points, but the way he solved those points were, as I would like to explain it, there was a cut in the finger, but instead of stitches or a Band-Aid, he amputated the hand. And that's why he got these numbers that have no sense.
But he took them from the database that you have used, correct?
Yeah, and he could have done other calculations. And actually, we took into account his observation, and that's how, that was the biggest change. It went from 10 to 15%. It's reasonable to be careful with ongoing projects. But if you take them all out, then your denominator drops dramatically, and that's how you get this exponential growth in failure rates that, again, this graph makes no sense.
My last question for you would be, we noticed that, or you confirmed that you had revised the failure rates in your slide 41. Is this a revision you would like to introduce into your written statements? Or do you stand by your written statements?
Well, if I am to do so, I would do so on, including the first two. We eliminated, well, we determined the actual status of the few projects that had NA on them, and that generated a 0.1% increase from 10.1% to 10.2%. The adjustment for ongoing projects, the way we solve that, and I apologize for if I'm going too much into the detail. We use 2021, the database for 2021 on the record. We eliminated all the ongoing projects that were launched from 2018 on, because we don't have enough information. But all those ongoing previous to that, since we're looking at it from a vantage point of 2021, we have 4 years to determine whether these projects in the market have been successful or not. Remember, most projects sell most of their units in their first years. So by 2021, we had a very clear sense of which projects launched prior to 2017 had been successful and which ones were not. That's how we ran the numbers, and that's how failure rate goes up to 15%, 15.3%.
So your second report is dated. Your second report is dated
September 16.
September 2021, right? So you already had the data by then.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And may I clarify something regarding failure risk data? This is not a usual metric we use in our projects or in the market, because we work at projects at the developers level. We don't do this analysis, so we did our best. We read Dr. Hearn's comments. Again, some of them are reasonable, and we rerun the numbers incorporating them. So that's why in this new type of analysis you will get this, oh, that's right, you can improve it a little here, improve it a little there.
Okay, so you did your best, but it can still be a bit improved here and there.
I think after Dr. Hearn's thorough review, we feel much better. Yeah.
Thank you. I will turn now to Mr. Dickinson. It's slide 7, please. Does Mr. Dickinson have a copy of the record, or he's just looking at the
He has
screen?
copies of both his reports, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. So in your slide 7, Mr. Dickinson, you discuss a lot about these 30 transactions totaling 3 billion that encompass 9,000 rooms, supposedly with comparable hotels, correct?
Yes, that was in the initial report, yeah.
And you said that your instructions from council were to compile a list of luxury upscale hotels, correct?
No, upscale to luxury hotels, yeah.
So that list is in your first report on page 106, which is on tab 5 of the cross bundle. Is this a table that you came up in your first report?
It looks like it if there are 30 transactions there. What page did you say it is? Because
I will not count them now, but I can represent that this is your first report, and it is your slide 100, your page 106.
Page 106. Okay, I see it.
So you said there's no comparable hotels in Colombia, and that's why you had to look into all other countries, Mexico, Aruba, Puerto Rico, Uruguay, Bermuda, Argentina, etc., correct?
Correct.
Is this list of transactions handpicked?
This is basically picked based upon certain criteria, for example, that they be between upscale and luxury, that they be full service hotels, that they be resort hotels or part of mixed use projects, that they be within the date frame of 2015 to 2019, and that they be within this Caribbean, Mexico, Central South America region.
But these are not the full transactions that took place between 2015 and 2019 for upscale to luxury hotels in the Latin America, Caribbean region, is it?
This is the full listing of the ones that met those criteria.
Okay, the criteria that you came up with, and it's not listed in your report, correct?
I'm not 100% sure if that criteria is listed, but what I just cited is the criteria that.
It is not. I can represent that.
Okay.
So now going back to your slide 7, you referred to the 30 transactions that total 30 billion, and I've already said this. Are all these 30 hotels fully built hotels?
Yes.
And they were operational at the time of the transaction, correct?
Yes.
So you have a very similar table in your second report on page 33, and it's on tab 1 of the cross bundle.
Second.
Do you have it there? Sorry, the table is not on page 33, but there's the explanation of the table. The table is on page 43 of your second report.
Okay, give me just a second. Okay, I found it.
And this list on page 43 includes only 26 transactions, correct?
Yes.
And your explanation, and now it is on page 33 that I was referring to before, is that because Dr. Hearn had identified that 4 of those 30 original hand-picked transactions referred to casino hotels, and therefore the market value was not representative of normal hotels. So you decided for your second report to remove those 4 hotels, correct?
Yeah, we felt that was a reasonable assertion, and so we removed those for the second report.
But still in your slide 7, you referred to the 30, and you haven't updated the numbers in accordance with your second report.
No. In slide 7, I basically say that 30 transactions totaling was reduced to 26 by removing the 4 large casino hotels.
So you do acknowledge that removing only 4 hotels has a difference of $1 billion in terms of
Yes.
market value.
Yeah.
And this is 1/3 of the value. Now, the average per key price has also been reduced from 274,000 to 204,000, correct?
Yes.
That is a difference of $70,000, correct?
Correct.
So is there any other factor in addition to whether the hotel having a casino or not that should be considered when comparing these transactions? For example, would a fully built hotel be comparable or considered as equally as a yet to be built hotel?
Yeah, I mean, if you were trying to value a yet to be built hotel, the assumption would be that it is built and operational, and therefore it's comparable. So yes, that's how you would do it.
So you mean that if someone were to buy today an idea of a Hilton hotel here next door, he would pay the same as he would have paid for a Hilton that is fully built, because that's the market value.
No, that's a different that's a different assumption. Someone would not pay just for the plans to build a hotel. They would not pay the same amount because you have to go through all the development risk and all of that.
Thank you. And do you know what was the status of the claimants' projects in Colombia?
Yeah, I mean, I do generally know that the Meritage was kind of in the process of being built, and that all the others were proposed projects.
Was the Meritage Hotel in the process of being built?
I believe it was under construction at the time that it was stopped. But again, I'm not 100%. I know that the project itself was under construction. Whether the hotel component of it was part of it, I'm not 100% sure.
So assuming it was not, would it still be comparable to this fully built and operational hotels?
Well, the assumption when you go to try to value a proposed hotel is that it is fully built and operational. That's how you do the comparison.
That's a big assumption, because you just said that when valuing one that is not fully built, you need to consider all the risks, including, for example, that there was no financing.
But the fundamental assumption is that when you go to do the value of a proposed hotel, the fundamental assumption is that it is basically an as complete or as developed valuation.
I see. So there's one more factor to be considered, and this you have already acknowledged as well in your page 34 of your second report. It's also on tab 1, sorry. And basically what you said is that how developed the tourism sector in the country where the hotel is located is a relevant factor when doing the valuation, correct? It's page 34 of the second report. It's this kind of pink, red. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. So I'm on that page now. Please repeat it.
So there you say, although these countries' tourism sectors are larger and more mature, this transactions data can provide a sense of what similar transactions would carry in the Colombian market. Correct.
Yes.
So from there, I understand that you consider that the tourism sector is a relevant factor when considering whether our transactions are comparable or not, correct?
It is one of many factors, and some of these are more developed and some of them are less developed. I could have been a little bit more artful in the wording of that.
Is any of them as developed as Colombia?
Are any of these markets as developed as Colombia?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think some of them are as developed, perhaps even a little bit more developed.
Less developed?
But, well, some are as or more developed and some are less developed.
Which one, for example, would be less developed? Mexico?
No, I think Mexico, generally speaking, is probably more developed than Colombia as far as its tourism sector.
Yeah. And going through your table, which one would be less developed?
I think, generally speaking, like even Barbados or Nevis, Cayman to a certain extent, less hotel rooms, less visitation numbers, things like that. So generally speaking, those could be considered less developed.
And when you are within a country, you would agree with me that not every area of a country is equally developed. So you probably have in Mexico more developed areas and less developed areas, correct?
That's true.
Would that change the comparability of the hotels, or do you compare a country as a whole?
Well, I think, you look at the country as a whole, but you're looking at individual tourist markets within the country. For example, in Mexico, we did look at Cancun, Riviera Maya, Puerto Vallarta, Peñasco, and Los Cabos. And each of those have their own particular characteristics, but they are all part of Mexico's tourism industry, just as Colombia too. I think, Cartagena could be considered a little bit more developed, say, than Santa Marta. But it is still all part of the Colombia tourism as a destination.
If you were to consider, for example, Zacatecas in Mexico, is that...
I'm sorry?
If you were... Zacatecas. It is a place in Mexico. Mr.
Zacatecas?
Exactly. It's just a non-touristic place in Mexico. Let's assume you need to value their hotel. Would you value it the same as a hotel in the Caribbean, in Cancun, for example?
If I were, well, it would depend very much on the nature of the specific hotel to be valued.
So let's go in tab 6, this transcript of day 2 of this hearing when we were cross-examining Mr. Seda, the claimant in this arbitration. And we know because Seda told us it's on page 440 of the transcript, line 9 to 18, where Mr. Seda explained that his business strategy was to check for areas that were not attractive, but where he saw a promise, where he would be the first arriver, and then trying to create something attractive and that usually people would follow. Then he for example, he referred in particular to Guatapé, where the Luxe Hotel was being built. Have you considered this factor when representing, for example, that the Luxe Hotel in Guatapé, which is a region, in case you don't know, that has until very recently suffered from severe violence issues without any track record of touristic destination, be comparable to, for example, and I take just one, the Four Seasons in Costa Rica, that is a full-service luxury hotel?
Again, as I mentioned, sort of with the white hair or whatever, I actually remember what the region looked like where the Four Seasons is now. Before it was built, it was very isolated, very, very much on its own. There was absolutely nothing there in Papagayo at the particular time, and it was sort of the first property to be built there. Over the course of 25 years, it has evolved to become quite the destination. Kind of the catalyst for a lot of other development. So I almost think it's a great example of what happens if you pick a fundamentally good spot and invest in the infrastructure that it can turn into a viable vision. I mean, actually, the same thing happened with Puerto Vallarta, the same thing happened with Cancun, and a lot of tourist destinations. They started out with nothing.
But that is a big assumption, because I'm not a hotel expert, but I'm sure there's many others that have failed, that they have gone to Zacatecas thinking it was a great location and built a hotel, and it turned out not being a great location, correct?
I don't know.
Is there a beach in Medellin?
In Medellin, there's not a beach, no.
In Guatapé? Is it at the Caribbean?
In Guatapé, there is a beach, actually, because it's on a lake. So I have been to the site there in Guatapé, so I know the area, and it's phenomenally beautiful. The vistas are incredible. The water is nice, and the beach itself is very nice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How is do you have been there? Do you know what the region looks like now? Has it become the new Cancun of the Medellin region?
To be frank, ever since the COVID pandemic, I have not been to Colombia now since like 2019.
And before 2019?
I had been. Well, at the time, Guatapé, it was characterized. It had a number of small kind of. There was one fairly large resort hotel there, but then there was a number of sort of small mom and pop type boutique hotels there. You could see that was a weekend destination for people who live in the area. Guatapé, the Luxe would have been it would have been a unique project within the Guatapé area. So I personally believe that the what's the word? The base requirements in terms of proximity to a major airport, proximity to a major city, waterfront location with beach, incredible vistas, and the facilities themselves are actually proposed, I think could have made for a very, very interesting destination type resort there in Antioquia.
Thank you. We will see with time what turns out being out of Guatapé.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
Well, we cannot predict the future, so.
No, we can't. We can only sort of, if past is prologue. I remember going to Cartagena in 2008. It was not necessarily a walk in the park compared to what it looked like in 2019.
I would like to go to slide 5 of your presentation.
Okay.
And this is where you compare the ADR of the Charlie Hotel versus the top tier markets in Colombia, correct?
The aggregate upscale and above markets in Medellin, Bogota, and Cartagena, yes.
So you have a similar kind of information, or you've provided this information on page 46 of your first report. Is this where your slide? Page 46, please. The second report. Sorry. Page 46 of second report.
Oh, the second report.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Apologies.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
So
Yeah, I see it now. Yeah.
So your slide 5, sorry, is based on your page 46 of the second report, isn't it?
Let me look back at.
It's on the screen if it's easier.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna just let me double check something real quick. 397. Yeah, it looks like the same information. Yeah.
So, but in your slide 5, you haven't included all these sources or the comparators that you include on page 46 of your second report, correct?
Yeah, because I know that it's in the record, and so it's basically just to save space.
Okay, I see. So page 46, and I read. Based on an evaluation of the rate structure, market orientation, location, facilities, amenities, reputation, quality, and performance. Sure, sorry. Based on an evaluation of the rate structure, market orientation, location, facilities, amenities, reputation, quality, and performance of the Charlie Hotel, JLL positioned and categorized it as a luxury hotel. I understand.
Yes.
Then, yeah. And then you continue saying JLL estimates show that the Charlie Hotel outperformed its competition by almost double in terms of ADR before COVID-19. Correct. That's what you say there.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
So further down in your second report, you say that the ADR information for the Charlie Hotel was provided by the hotel, while the information for Cartagena and Bogota were sourced from STR.
Yes.
So, yeah. Did you verify the ADR data for the Charlie?
No.
Okay. So
took it as actual data.
I didn't catch that.
Could you please repeat, Mr. Dickinson?
Yes. Just took it as, in that it was historical, just took it as actual historical performance data.
Okay, so you took the data you got from the Charlie and then you compared it with data you obtained from these other hotels as processed by STR that you list here on the right side of page 46 of your second report.
Yes.
And I assume that you consider these hotels listed here to be the Charlie Hotels competition, correct? And that's why you are comparing this?
Well, in the aggregate, it represents kind of the upscale, the upper end of those particular markets. If I were to be doing an analysis specifically of the Charlie Hotel, then I might end up picking as best as I could specific comparators, but I'm really trying to compare it to the overall market as opposed to any particular hotel.
I see. Now, if you go to your slide 4 of your presentation, I assume these are also top-tier market hotels in Colombia, aren't they?
They are now, yes.
And you seem to consider this as competitors of the Charlie Hotel, correct?
No, not at all. That wasn't the purpose of this here. This was really to show the entrance of a lot of global hotel chains. None of these would necessarily be direct competition with the Charlie Hotel.
Why not? Because these are luxury hotels?
No, because the Charlie Hotel, 42 rooms and an independent luxury lifestyle hotel would really not compete at all with, say, the Hilton Corferias, which is like a 430-room group-oriented hotel positioned at the upper upscale end of the market. And I think you could say the same thing about the Grand Hyatt Hotel that's over 300 rooms, or the Hyatt Regency in Cartagena that's 200 and something rooms. So these would not necessarily compete with each other. If there was one there that maybe would compete, it would be something like the Bog Hotel.
You seem to be a bit selective on what competes, because we were just saying that a hotel in, like, for example, you have here in, and I'm going back to slide 46, the table we just that we were just discussing on slide 46 of your second report, where you compare, for example, the Charlie with the Hilton in Los Cabos and with many hotels in Cancun, but now apparently some of the hotels in Colombia that you have on page 4 are not competing directly. So it seems a bit selective to me.
Well, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I think there's a difference when you're trying to look at a hotel that is directly competitive with a particular hotel versus a transaction that is generally comparable because it sort of fits within the same overall classification, whether it be upscale, upper upscale, or a luxury property.
And still, some of the hotels that are listed in your slide 4 are included in your page 46 of your second presentation. For example, the Marriott Medellin.
Yeah, the Marriott Medellin is, again, it is one of the aggregate in order to sort of show the upper end of the Medellin market. And it is probably competitive indirectly for certain market segments with the Charlie Hotel. It's located only about a block or two away. And, to a certain extent, it probably goes for some of the same transient business travel or whatever at certain times of the week.
Did you consider the ADR of any of the hotels that are listed on slide 4 of your presentation?
Did I consider the 80 for what purpose?
For comparing them with the Charlie.
I'm, again, not necessarily comparing any of these here with the Charlie. You could look at the Marriott. I guess that's the only one that, because it was both an example of a globally branded hotel that came into Colombia in 2018, and it happens to be in Medellin. And located very close to the Charlie Hotel. If I were to be doing a market study to try to, look at the Charlie Hotel, I would interview and determine whether or not the Marriott was or was not either directly or indirectly competitive with it. If it were, then I would consider the average daily rate of the Marriott.
Okay, so just because I'm a bit confused now, which one of the hotels on page 4 would you consider to be competitor with the Charlie?
Again, I'm not sure that any of the ones on page 4 would be direct competitors to the Charlie Hotel.
Okay, because
that's not the purpose of that.
Because the Marriott Medellin, the Bastion Luxury Hotel, and the Sofitel Santa Clara Cartagena are included in your on page 46 in your ADR analysis, whereas all the others are not.
Right, because it's really for a different reason. It's included there in order to get a sense of how the ADR of the Charlie Hotel compares sort of with the, given the data in SCR, the aggregate of sort of the upscale market of Medellin, Bogota, and Cartagena. Not that it's directly competitive with any individual hotel per se.
Okay, so basically it's handpicked. You just handpicked some hotels that you consider to be more or less comparable, and you compare their ADR, and you concluded that the Charlie's is double, almost double.
Yeah, we basically tried to pick the upscale and above hotels in those markets that were part of the SCR database in order to give an idea of what is the aggregate ADR of generally upscale and above hotels in those three major market areas.
But it's not an exhaustive analysis then?
No, it's just really meant to be representative. But
okay.
Again, I think the... Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, like we staying on this slide, you say that one of the factors why you consider the Charlie to be a luxury hotel is because of its location, correct? It's
not necessarily.
So you say based on an evaluation of the rate structure, market orientation, location, etc. JLL positioned and categorized it as a luxury hotel. This is what you say in your report.
Okay, so yeah, I'll give you that its location there right at Parquilleras and in Poblado is one of the nicer areas of Medellin. So it's among many different factors as listed here that we use to consider the Charlie a luxury hotel, but it's primarily its ability to drive ADR and RevPAR premium.
Okay, so you just referred to the Parquilleras as a very nice section of Medellin. Can we please go to exhibit R45 of the record? And this is on tab 4. Do you know, by the way, what Charlie, the name, stands for?
No, I don't.
Okay. I would like to turn to exhibit C68, which is tab 3.
Sorry, could you enlighten us?
I don't know either. Maybe we can ask Mr. Seda later.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Seda?
No, not now. I think now.
Yes,
I'm fine answering at this moment. Are we asking where?
No,
the essence
I
of the
will have to
name?
stop this. I would not ask Mrs. Seda to.
But sorry, I asked Mr. Seda.
Oh, I'm
Could
sorry.
you
I didn't
please
hear
tell
that.
us how do you come up with this name? Did you come up with this name?
Yeah, it's a little quirky, but
Very shortly.
In when I was younger, I used to watch a lot of television with my mother, and there was this commercial about Charlie perfume, and the essence of it was like during the women's empowerment movement, and there was this powerful woman who was both like an executive and at the same time sexy, and her ability to be able to manage both sides of that world. And so that stuck with me in my head. And when we were looking for a name, I was looking for a name with 2 syllables, and that was something memorable for me. And that was from my childhood with my mother. It was very important for me. That's where the name comes from.
Thank you.
Going now to exhibit C68, and I want to go to page 50. And this is a brochure for the 450 Heights investment project. So you can show first maybe the cover page. Yeah. And then we go to page 50, where we see that the 450 Heights Hotel was associated with the Charlie brand. And that's not surprising, because that's the brand that Mr. Seda claims to have established in Colombia. And if we go now So just to pose a question for Mr. Dickinson, you see then that, or are you aware that the 450 height project was somehow related to the Charlie Lifestyle Hotel brand?
Yeah, it was my understanding that all of these properties would be somehow related to the Charlie, either Luxe by Charlie or somehow associated with the Charlie brand.
So now if we go to page 55 of the same document, and you will need to look at the Spanish version, because an English version was not provided by the claimants. It's the same brochure, and we see at the top it says the prensa de la marca Charlie, which means in English media about the Charlie brand. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I see prensa de la marca Charlie. Okay, yeah.
And we should soon have a break.
I'm
by the
about
way.
to finish.
Okay, fine.
I have a few more
Please
questions. So just I want just to go back to the cover page to show that this is in fact the cover page where the Royal Property Group is advertising a community, right? Do you see that in the cover page? So, una comunidad planeada por Royal Property Group. Is that what you see there? I think we
Sorry.
lost you, Mr.
Yeah,
Dickinson.
no, I'm sorry, I had it on mute. Yeah, I mean, what I read there is a community planned by the Royal Property Group, Medellin, Colombia, 450 Heights, Medellin. And it looks like an architectural rendering.
Then if we go to page 4 of the same brochure, and it's important data, datos importantes of the project, we see that there was supposed to be a guardería, which means a daycare in Spanish, correct?
A guardería, which means, where is that?
Daycare.
Where do you see
You
that?
can put the English version, please. So you see a daycare, like the proposed product, we include a daycare. And then if we go to page 47 of this same brochure, you see that the project was supposed to include as well an area for kids and pets, correct? Is that what you see?
Yeah, I see that there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. No further questions.
Very good. Thank you. Will there be redirect?
Just two questions. One for Mr. Dickinson, please. Mr. Dickinson, are you aware that the Charlie was also advertised in publications such as the New York Times, Condé Nast, Vogue Travel? Are you aware of publicity, of that sort of publicity of the Charlie Hotel?
Yeah, I've been made aware of that in connection with this particular case.
This is a question for Mr. Ruiz. Are you aware of the sales velocity of the Meritage project?
I believe I saw some numbers in one of the reports, but I haven't.
How would you characterize it? Was it high?
What I
low?
saw was consistent with all the comparable projects we found near it. One comes to mind. We did our evaluation in 2019, and by then, another high-end luxury project had been launched just a mile south of the Meritage, and it was selling at a very fast pace. I can't remember the number, but it was all of them had a pace of above 10 units per month.
And was the historical sales of the Meritage project, the ones that were already sold in phases 1 and 6, would you characterize that as high, low?
If you give
Sorry,
me the
Mr.
number.
President? I don't think I've asked any question about speed of sale of the Meritage.
I'm just trying to understand. I can be a little bit clearer in my question, I think.
We have no further question. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. We will now have a morning break of 15 minutes, meaning that we will resume at 11:15, please.
Thank you and bye-bye.
resume. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Let me get this right here. So to my left is Mr. Joa, is that correct? And you are Mr. Maugeri.
Mugeri.
Thank you very much. Please read for the record the declaration that is before you.
Sure. I solemnly declare upon my honor and conscience that my statement will be in accordance with my sincere belief.
You gotta push the button.
Sorry.
I solemnly declare upon my honor and conscience that my statement will be in accordance with my sincere belief.
Thank you very much. We now invite you to give us your
Great.
presentation.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. President and members of the tribunal. We thank you for the opportunity to present today. Just a quick introduction. My name is Chris Mugeri. I am the Senior Managing Director of Valuation and Advisory Services for CBRE in Latin America. I have a Master's in Valuation from Canada. I am also a certified member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. Our group values approximately $40 billion in real estate in Latin America per year, with a number of several different property types, including those subject to this hearing. We've actually valued quite a few of the hotels that was presented in the JLL report, and that are clearly not comparable to the projects proposed in this. But I will pass on to my colleague David Garcia to present himself quickly.
Les voy a pedir el favor, hablo inglés, pero me siento más cómodo haciendo esta presentación en español, entonces va a ser una cosa de dos idiomas. Vamos a darle la palabra uno al otro para que no haya confusiones. Hablando un poco de mi experiencia profesional, soy economista, tengo una maestría en finanzas, soy especialista de economía del riesgo, soy evaluador certificado por las autoridades de Colombia, o sea, tengo experiencia en valoración. En el sector inmobiliario he trabajado cerca de 14 años en diferentes roles, en roles de investigación económica, en diferentes instituciones. En los últimos 6 años he trabajado en CBRE dentro del equipo de valoración y consultoría. En este momento pues funjo como líder de la división. Tengo experiencia en la valoración de diferentes tipos de inmuebles, parte de los que se están mencionando en este caso y pues otros que no están mencionados en este caso. Entonces le voy a pasar la palabra a mi compañero.
Great. Thank you, David. Just before we get into methodology, as a reminder, and I think you understand what our instruction was, but we were instructed by GBS Disputes to analyze various of the assumptions of BRGs that were used in the report to come up with the calculation on damages. These include prices, cost, profitability, or developers' profitability, construction costs, and discount rates as well as speed of sales. So in terms of methodology, as we mentioned, we really focused on different areas, and I'll describe those below, but we did use the highly recognized residential real estate database by Coordenada Urbana, by Camacol. We'll describe briefly those differences between what was used by JLL. And we relied on surveys with very active developers related to relevant projects and similar projects comparable to those being discussed in this hearing. Just as a note, surveys that monitor specifically investor-developer expectations related to discount rates are heavily relied upon by valuation experts and analysts when coming up with a DC valuation model. In the table below, you can see our assumptions, the ones analyzed. I will describe who focused on those. The first assumption related to pricing and speed of sales. My colleague David Garcia focused on this area within our report. And the data that was used principally was Coordenada Urbana by Chemical, as was mentioned briefly. I did focus on the section of construction costs, which is related, again, data sources. We used active surveys with developers, with a lot of presence in the market. We reviewed actual construction budgets. We did use DANE, which was mentioned in JLL as well, for the construction costs in Cartagena in particular. We used a construction cost magazine known as Construdata, and we did for some benchmarks related to the hotel FF&E. Specifically, we used HVS. Related to discount rates, we used surveys, again, with active developers, which is very relevant, and we did rely on an investor survey by a very reputable local valuation firm, Logan Valuation. With that, I will pass it on to my colleague David to describe our conclusions related to sales pricing.
Desde este punto vamos a pasar a los supuestos que estuvimos analizando, pues los precios, los costos de construcción y la rentabilidad posible pues, de los proyectos. Acá nosotros, esta es una tabla que no está totalmente referenciada en nuestro informe. Digamos que quisimos hacer este resumen para que ustedes pudieran ver qué es lo que nosotros vimos y después de ahí, pues qué fue lo que incluimos en nuestro reporte inicial. Y nosotros nos remitimos directamente pues, a los modelos que se estaban referenciando pues, en toda la información. Hicimos un análisis o una revisión de lo que había en el reporte de BRG e hicimos un contraste con lo que se podía ver en el mercado. Acá tengo que hacer una salvedad, pues nosotros vimos algunos renders que podían dar como una posible referencia de lo que posiblemente podría haber en esas locaciones, pero pues como no teníamos una forma de contrastarlo en la realidad, nos fuimos como al amplio del mercado. Cuando estábamos mirando esos precios, entonces estábamos analizando primero cuál podría ser como un parámetro de comparación. Uno es el precio, por supuesto, o sea, teníamos que segmentar la muestra por un precio disponible para poder hacer ese análisis. Y una cosa muy particular en Colombia, que de pronto ustedes ya han escuchado de manera diferente, en Colombia nosotros también seccionamos las viviendas por una clasificación que se llama estrato, donde se supone que del estrato 5 a 6, que es lo máximo que se puede lograr, es categorizado o es definido como las viviendas de lujo. Entonces, lo que nosotros pudimos ver en nuestra muestra, a manera general, viendo los mercados en donde pues, estaban estos proyectos que nos pidieron el favor de evaluar, nos fuimos a lo que estaba ahí y pues lo que encontramos es que había algunos segmentos que efectivamente el mercado no existía, como en el caso de Guatapé, no había un mercado activo, y esto no es porque no existieran ese tipo de inmuebles en general, sino porque la costumbre del mercado es más autoconstrucción. Normalmente se tiene un terreno propio y pues uno lo va desarrollando pues en la medida de sus necesidades o de su gusto, y pues normalmente no hay un mercado muy activo de este tipo de activos de primera, como un primer mercado pues muy activo de ese tipo de activos. Lo que vimos es de lo que había en la muestra, pues lo que se estaba mostrando en el mercado por metro cuadrado. Digamos que aquí es un poco para tener la claridad de que nosotros utilizamos la medición por metro cuadrado, es que pues era significativamente menor de lo que podíamos encontrar en el mercado pues, que estamos analizando. Así lo hicimos para todos. En el caso de 450 Heights, las diferencias eran menores de lo que habíamos encontrado pues, entre el mercado y la muestra, y decimos que pues, no hay una gran diferencia, pero para los otros proyectos sí encontramos una gran diferencia. También, pues, solo como para una referencia, y esto pues viendo parte de la información, pues los hoteles o los aparta hoteles en ese mercado para la venta no es algo común. Hay algunas iniciativas, hay algunos proyectos, pero no es algo común, digamos que no es el típico producto que tú encuentras a la venta en Antioquia. Los pocos que hay, pues están en Medellín, están muy hacia la zona metropolitana de Medellín. Y la referencia de precio que pudimos encontrar en ese momento, nosotros analizamos sencillamente la data entre 2015 y 2017 porque pues esa fue la petición, que estuviéramos muy enfocados hacia esos años, era de 6.2 millones de pesos. Ahí pueden, en la parte izquierda de nuestra diapositiva, ahí hay una referencia, hay un mensaje donde estamos mostrando eso, solo como para que quede en el récord. Ya cuando hablamos pues de otros determinantes, pues nosotros, como lo explicó mi colega, hicimos una verificación de las bases de datos y por el tipo de información que nos estaban solicitando, por el pedido, pues que hay mucha desinformación que no es pública, no hay una base de datos confiable de libre acceso o pues por lo menos que sea abierta para todos los jugadores de algunos indicadores. Nosotros le preguntamos directamente pues a estas personas en un halo de confidencialidad, fue en el tema pues muy de confianza, pues aprovechando las relaciones que tenemos con ellos, no poniendo de antemano que estábamos en un caso para no contaminar sus respuestas, para que no nos hicieran o estuvieran contaminados de sesgo de algún tipo de sentimiento al respecto. Entonces lo que nosotros encontramos pues primero es que pues para todos los que nos contestaron es que pues sí reconocen al Hotel Charlie como un hotel exitoso, sí lo reconocen, pues está digamos que en una zona de muy buena tráfico de personas, que tiene una afluencia de público, no lo reconocen como una marca de lujo, digamos que eso es algo que no lo encontramos. Y en la muestra, y pues viendo digamos que esa connotación y lo que pudimos ver también de los números que vimos es que muchos de los precios que se estaban viendo en esos modelos y la proyección de ventas era pues muy optimista. Era desde el lado optimista de un análisis donde un inversionista normalmente puede tomar una posición, este es digamos que en la parte alta, no está en la parte media de un análisis normal. También pues hablando de la misma connotación de lo que significa el Parque Lleras, pues es una zona como ya lo vimos en la anterior presentación, pues es muy activa en términos de la vida nocturna que tiene, pues incluye bares, tiene restaurantes, el rooftop es reconocido entre la juventud, es más, digamos que lo que nosotros vimos, lo que vemos del proyecto y lo que vimos de las entrevistas es que pues está más orientado a un entretenimiento más adulto, no tanto familiar. Y pues cuando uno hace, digamos que uno de los componentes en nuestra lectura de lo que significa una marca de lujo es que pues también tenga este componente familiar para que pues la familia pueda o las familias encuentren un nicho natural en visitar este tipo de hotel. Lo que no vemos, digamos que es el link entre el reconocimiento a la marca, que se reconoce que tiene un éxito, pero en esta orientación hacia las familias, es más hacia el entretenimiento de adultos sin niños pequeños, por lo menos. Paso a Chris.
Thank you, David. Construction costs, I won't spend too much time on this slide. We based on our conclusions, again, we provided the data sources and the segments that we focused on, which were strata 5 and above. Our costs or our evidence really discloses that we're generally in line with the direct costs on the residential components. So I will pass the word back on to David.
Esta parte del estudio que hicimos salió principalmente de estas encuestas que nosotros hicimos. Esta es de ese tipo de información que estaba mencionando inicialmente que no es típicamente pública. O sea, hay que tener una expertise en el mercado para poder encontrar esta información. Aquí no nos basamos en Coordenada Urbana, que era nuestro proveedor de información. Hay algo que tengo que mencionar sobre Coordenada Urbana, como para hacer esa distinción en lo que significa, por qué usamos encuestas en un momento y por qué usamos Coordenada Urbana. Y quiero hacer una mención sobre Coordenada Urbana. Coordenada Urbana, pues el dueño detrás de Coordenada Urbana es la Cámara Colombiana de la Construcción. Es el gremio de la construcción en Colombia. Tiene un récord esta agremiación de 65 años. Es muy reconocida dentro del mercado. Todos los miembros que están en el Board of Directors de Camacol son reconocidos en el mercado, tienen amplia experiencia. Digamos que parte de la relevancia de la fuente como tal es que Camacol hace parte del Sistema Nacional de Estadísticas, o sea, el gobierno nacional de Colombia utiliza la información de Camacol para tomar decisiones de política de vivienda. Cuando nosotros estábamos analizando pues qué tipo de información podríamos tener, conocemos la relevancia de Galería Inmobiliaria. Acá no quiero digamos, decir que no teníamos ni acceso ni no conocíamos la base de datos. Sencillamente, Coordenada Urbana tiene una presencia, Camacol, que es el dueño de Coordenada Urbana, tiene una presencia institucional muy importante. Es utilizada por muchos bancos y instituciones aseguradoras y financieras en Colombia para la toma de decisiones, que dentro de nuestro modo de ver este tipo de instituciones hace análisis muy realistas de lo que son los proyectos, porque cuando uno está haciendo un análisis de financiación de un proyecto, uno tiene que ser mucho más aplomado en cuáles son las proyecciones que va a poner, porque tiene que ponderar el riesgo. Entonces no estoy diciendo que eso necesariamente pues invalide otra fuente de información, solo que ese fue, digamos, que la intención que tuvimos para usar Coordenada Urbana. Y en el caso pues de lo que significaba el rendimiento de los desarrolladores, o lo que nosotros preguntamos es, en una visión de 2017, antes de pandemia, imagínese que usted, vamos a quitar el efecto del COVID, en las zonas de Medellín, viendo una segunda vivienda de Cartagena, y también en Medellín, y por favor remítase al submercado de la Sabana de Bogotá, que es el mercado más natural para este tipo de viviendas por el nivel socioeconómico que tiene Bogotá. ¿Cuál sería usted, según su experiencia, que el nivel razonable de rentabilidad que esperaría para esos proyectos? Entonces lo que encontramos fue una muestra de entre 10% y 18%, esto apoyado en las mismas respuestas, haciendo un análisis estadístico normal de la muestra, y también las mismas opiniones de los que contestaban. Ellos decían, lo más probable es que estemos esperando entre un 12 y un 15%. Eso es lo que encontramos para lo que es la rentabilidad esperada de un desarrollador de este tipo de proyectos. Le paso la palabra a Chris.
Thank you, David. Discount rates are an extremely important part of any DCF model, of course. The highest risk segment in real estate is speculative developments for sale. So we would expect, obviously, discount rates significantly higher than your standard real estate projects. Our findings, based on our interviews, and again, we focused on the higher end segment. We mentioned here over 800 million Colombian pesos, which is broadly speaking about $265,000 and above per unit. Our respondents, we do have 11 indications on this chart, but the actual number of respondents is larger, given that we incorporated the Logan investment report as well into our findings. So we generally have a range between 13.2 and 31.3 from our findings from our respondents. eliminating the higher end and the lower end of the spectrum. We're generally in a range between 18 and 25%. It's important to know BRG used a post-tax discount rate of 7.7%. We did adjust that, given that our discount rates are unlevered and pre-tax. So we did make that adjustment, and that brings up the BRG equivalent discount rate to 13%. So this is clearly low on the low end, given the range between 18 and 25% is generally more realistic based on our findings. I'll pass on the word back to David.
En esta parte queremos hacer mención sobre nuestra estimación de lo que podrían, bueno, estimación no, lo que encontramos en el mercado y de hablar con los participantes más activos acerca pues de las velocidades de ventas y lo que se podría definir como un proyecto típico del segmento alto en los mercados que analizamos. Entonces queríamos decir algo al respecto. Aquí pues están dos fuentes utilizadas. Utilizamos a Coordenada Urbana como la fuente, pues digamos que más completa en términos de historia, porque hicimos pues un análisis a lo largo de los meses utilizando esa base de datos, pero pues también hicimos dentro del encuestamiento algunas preguntas relacionadas con este indicador para poder tener, digamos que, una idea más clara de lo que podría ser lo que espera un inversionista de este tipo de proyectos. En esas preguntas que pudimos hacer, primero pues aquí también reconociendo que los proyectos tienen momentos. Hay una fase de preventas que se hace sobre planos y hay otra fase que ya se hace después de que se logra el punto de equilibrio y hasta finalización del proyecto. Se reconoce que en los primeros momentos hay un nivel mucho más alto de ventas. Esto porque pues en ese mismo nivel hay varios momentos. Hay algo que en el mercado se conoce como lista cero. Esta lista cero que lo utilizan muchos desarrolladores es para invitar a los clientes pues, más recurrentes, a los amigos o familiares o esos inversionistas muy cercanos para que puedan llegar a comprar pues, las unidades, y en ese momento del tiempo seguramente va a haber un nivel de ventas típicamente mayor que en los meses subsiguientes. Pero ya cuando miramos, digamos que la data histórica de largo plazo, y aquí reconociendo pues que los proyectos o cualquier activo en la economía pues tiene sus altas y sus bajas, nosotros queríamos quitar ese efecto pues de lo que significa solo ver ventas, sino qué es lo que significa un mes que se ve ventas, un mes que no se ven ventas, pues para tener digamos que todo el espectro. Lo que nosotros pudimos ver pues de esa, digamos que un comentario, pues Guatapé, por las razones que había mencionado anteriormente, pues tiene un bajo inventario. Sí pueden haber momentos en donde las ventas son mayores que los promedios de largo plazo. Perdón, esto por las mismas características del mercado. Vemos que si ya ajustado por eso, pues es mucho más razonable hablar entre un rango entre 0.5 y 1.5 unidades por mes. Se puede llegar, digamos que a tener una referencia de 2 meses, 2 unidades por mes, pero digamos que en un escenario yéndose un poquito más allá del promedio. Analizamos los supuestos que están en los datos que nos pudieron compartir, porque pues sí sabemos que Meritage en la fase 1 pues había un récord de ventas, lo pudimos comprobar por lo menos en los datos que nos dieron. Era cerca de 4 unidades por mes en un periodo de 39 meses. Es un buen indicador, pero cuando uno se va a ver la historia en general, pues, y aquí lo que estamos replicando es el análisis de un inversionista típico, normal, no que tenga, digamos que un espíritu aventurero, no, bueno, la palabra no es aventurero, pero que fuera, que sea como más abusado que la media de la industria, pues tendría que ser un poco más conservador, pensando en que va a haber momentos en donde no va a tener un buen nivel de ventas, sino que pues estas van a ser menores. Y lo que nosotros podemos contrastar con las otras proyecciones de los otros modelos es que primero eran mucho más optimistas en casi todos los escenarios que lo que se presentaba en Meritage, que pues Meritage sí es un proyecto que tuvo algún nivel de ventas comprobado. En el caso de 450 Heights, las fase 1 planteaba un promedio de 14 unidades por mes, que pues es más de 3 veces lo que se había visto en el Meritage. Empezaba a ser un nivel más conservador hacia abajo a medida que se iban planteando las fases, pero lo que vemos es que el planteamiento es muy superior a lo que estaba visto en Meritage. Y cuando uno rastrear el mercado, estamos hablando del segmento alto del mercado en un país que hay que reconocer que tiene una inequidad en el ingreso importante, en donde existen familias que tienen dinero, pero pues son un porcentaje muy pequeño de la población. Pues ahí lo que debemos decantar es que el tamaño de la demanda potencial pues es mucho menor. Entonces lo que uno debería esperar como respuesta de la demanda es que pues tenía que ser a niveles un poco más bajos por la misma disponibilidad y por el mismo sesgo que tiene el producto que se estaba ofreciendo. Esto ocurre sistemáticamente para todas las ciudades. Digamos que en el caso de Guatapé la diferencia es un poco menor, pero en los otros proyectos lo que estábamos viendo es que estaba superando lo que el promedio de largo plazo del segmento en la ciudad estaba sugiriendo las cifras. Le paso, bueno, no, aquí quiero hacer otra mención, perdón, olvidé esto. Parte de la petición que nos hicieron nuestros clientes es que por favor váyanse al mercado y traten de rastrear esas suposiciones que hicimos. Una forma que utilizamos, pues como ya lo mencioné, fueron las encuestas. Y aquí pues nos fuimos al mercado, le hicimos la pregunta a uno de los desarrolladores que es muy activo en la zona, que tiene un proyecto muy exitoso. Aquí tengo pues que mencionar que solo por el halo de confidencialidad que se mantuvo en la conversación fue tan abierto de decirnos cuáles eran sus cifras reales. Esto no es algo que esté en cualquier reporte de mercado de la competencia o de nosotros inclusive, porque pues es una información estratégica de negocio. Lo que pudimos rastrear de eso es que el pricing en el momento en que salió el proyecto, pues sí fue en incremento, pero alrededor de 2017 pues está alrededor de los 4.4 millones de pesos, que es un nivel de precio muy inferior con respecto a lo que se podía definir en el modelo de BRG. Cuando se miran las ventas en el primer momento, en el primer año de lanzamiento que tuvieron, ya viviendo, después de que pasó el hype de la lista cero y siguieron las ventas normales, el promedio real fue de 2 unidades por mes. Y ya cuando se analizó eso entre 2 años en perspectiva, realmente el promedio de ventas que pudieron tener fue de 1.4 unidades. La rentabilidad esperada de ese proyecto, bueno, efectiva, porque en este caso fueron cifras que nos compartieron, estuvo alrededor del 14%.
Thank you, David. So just based on all of that analysis and based on our independent expert opinion, we concluded pretty much three major items here. BRG really assumes a developer's profit specifically for the Meritage and the Tierra Bomba projects that are materially higher than what would be expected in the market. And we also conclude that what's driving these high profit margins are really related to optimistic assumptions on prices. The second conclusion is that BRG assumes a discount rate for the claimant's real estate activities, which is materially lower than the discount rates used by developers of high-end real estate projects in Colombia. And thirdly, BRG does assume that the claimant's real estate could sell at a materially faster rate than what is expected within the Colombian market. Thank you. That is our presentation, and we're opening up for questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Who would be in charge of cross-examination? Mrs. Ritwig, or?
Yes, that'll be me.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning. I think it's still the morning, yes. Good morning, Mr. Garcia. It's Mr. Garcia or Mr. Hoya?
Garcia Hoya.
Okay, Mr. Garcia Hoya and Mr. Majuri.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for being here. I'll just be asking you a few questions about your report today. Before we begin, it was not quite clear to me which of you were in charge of which sections of the report. So I was hoping that we could start with clarifying that. Maybe we can start with you, Mr. Majuri.
Sure. As I did mention at the beginning of the presentation, David focused on the pricing and speed of sales assumptions. I focused on the construction costs, as well as discount rates. And finally, David did focus more on the developer's profitability.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. I think you probably already know this since you were sitting in during JLL's testimony, but the tribunal has asked that when I do ask a question, since there are two of you, only one of you answer and the other one refrain from supplementing at that time. So let's proceed. I'd like to go to page 4 of your report. So here you have listed the instructions that you were provided by GBS. Are these the entirety of the instructions that you were provided with?
Yes, this is correct.
Okay. So here it says you were asked to provide certain estimates related to the real estate elements of claimants' projects. Is that right?
This is correct.
So you were asked to provide prices, costs, profitability, discount rates, speed of sales, all for real estate units and real estate elements.
This is correct.
You were not asked to provide any data on the hospitality or the hotel aspects of claimants' businesses.
This is correct.
Okay.
Keep your voice up, please. Just talk loud.
Okay.
Now, let's move on to pages 52 to 53 of your report. These are all the materials that you relied on? Yes?
Sí.
And so there are 4 case documents that you relied on up there, number 1 to 4?
Sí.
Yes. And you submitted 18 exhibits consisting of analysis, files, and articles that you also relied on. These are the 18 over here?
Sí.
Okay. I don't see the JLL reports here. Were you asked not to review them?
Sí lo revisamos. Pero nos enfocamos más en los modelos directamente de BRG, que tenían mención a los datos utilizados por JLL.
So you reviewed them, but you didn't list them in the materials relied upon because presumably you did not rely upon them or you did not assess them in any great detail.
No, sencillamente porque nos concentramos más en los modelos que listamos ahí en nuestro reporte. Que tenía información pues, de JLL, pero nuestro enfoque fue el modelo de BRG.
Understood, Mr. Garcia. Thank you for that clarification. Now, I think you discussed both in your presentation as well as in your report that you conducted a survey on which you relied for a number of the estimates that you provided. You recall talking about that?
¿Qué quieres saber de esa encuesta? Perdón.
I just wanted to, my question was just, do you remember talking about that?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now let's move to page 10 of your first report. So I've tried to look quite a bit in your report and in the sources that you provided, and this was about the best description of the survey that I could find. Are these the respondents that you surveyed? These are all of the respondents that you asked the questions off of?
Sí.
Now, not on this page nor in the rest of the document did I see a methodology provided of the survey. Did I miss that, perhaps?
Cuando se hacía menciona a cada uno de los datos extraídos de la encuesta, estaba la pregunta que se hizo y cuál fue el dato que se obtuvo de esa encuesta. Algo que se puede mostrar ahí, y si es alguien que conozca el mercado colombiano, es que varios de esos desarrolladores son importantes, tienen relevancia en los mercados que se está analizando, pues para este caso. Sí, gracias, muy amable. Y que tienen una presencia institucional importante. Esta encuesta o la muestra que se pudo recoger ahí, pues lo único que muestra es que hay actores del mercado que son relevantes y que tienen, digamos que un criterio importante para poder contestar sobre cuáles eran las preguntas que nosotros hicimos en su momento.
Understood. So, sorry, my echo is bothering me when I have the headphones on, but I think what I surmised from your response was that it's important to get the participants right, correct? To have a good survey.
Maybe this will help.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, actually.
Sí.
Try now.
Okay. And so apart from the participants, do you think it's also important to have a consistent methodology when you're performing a survey for, say, things like the exact question asked, the person who's asking those questions, how those questions are responded to, whether by writing or by phone, where those questions are written down, how they're collated? Are those kinds of aspects of a survey methodology also important, in your opinion?
Son descriptivos.
I haven't seen anywhere in your report, though, you describing these aspects of the methodology. You don't list them in your report anywhere, do you?
No de manera explícita. Pero eso no invalida ni quién respondió ni los resultados.
Understood, Mr. Garcia. So my understanding is that you recorded all of the responses that you got in the survey in one of the spreadsheets that you submitted with your report. Is that correct?
En las que se pudo tener respuesta efectiva, sí. En las que no, sencillamente no se puso.
And did you attempt to verify the data that you received from the survey response?
Dependía del tipo de pregunta. No todos contestaron las preguntas, y esto pues porque como es información muy confidencial, algunos sencillamente no quisieron responder, y pues sencillamente así lo tuvimos. Lo que nos pudieron contestar, eso fue lo que incluimos.
My question was, did you try to verify them? Did you ask for the underlying data to verify them?
No entendí la pregunta.
So say that you asked a survey respondent for their profit margins. Did you then ask for the underlying data, their accounting, their records, to verify that that was in fact their profit margin?
En algunas ocasiones sí, en otras no era necesario, porque eso es algo del conocimiento normal que tiene el mercado, es algo muy directo. Entonces, sencillamente respondían en función de la pregunta que se les hacía. Entonces, no era necesario revisar sus estados financieros, sino sencillamente del conocimiento que tenían ellos, porque todos eran personas con liderazgo y pues, que saben del mercado, pues tienen ese dato en la mente, sencillamente respondían. Y pues acá lo que estamos tratando de encontrar pues también es cuál es la razonabilidad de rentabilidad que un inversionista de esas características podía tener en este mercado. Eso era lo que nosotros preguntamos, eso fue lo que nosotros preguntamos y lo que nos respondieron.
Okay, so I think you said no. The answer to my question is no. Is that right? You did not ask for the underlying data. You took their word for it.
Sí.
Okay. So let's go to the spreadsheet where you did note down all of the information that was provided to you. Is that CBRE 09? It's not in the binder, it was not printable, so we'll have to see it on the screen. I apologize for that. So is this the raw data that you used to draft the report?
Sí.
Okay. Let's go to the tab that says Interviews Database Respondent. This is the list of respondents? Yes?
Sí.
Now, if Mr. Schimber can perhaps highlight rows 3 from 23 all the way down. It's okay. There are about 21 respondents here. Isn't that right?
Sí.
A couple of them appear to be double count over here.
Sí, parece un typo. Por
It's
eso
just a
nosotros
typo.
decimos son 18. Mm, parece un typo, perdón.
Okay. So there were only 18 respondents, not 21.
¿Verdad?
Okay. Let's go to page 10 of your first report.
Es cierto, no está ahí.
Okay. Let's go back to your report, page 10. It's the rightmost column, the top. Mhm.
Sí.
Thank you. You'll have to answer yes or no for the record, so thank you for that. Let's go back to the spreadsheet.
De lo residencial, porque ellos solo tienen experiencia en hoteles. Como nos pidieron que no habláramos sobre los hoteles, sencillamente pusimos que hablamos con ellos, pero no lo incluimos en la muestra. Ninguna de esas respuestas tiene ese componente. Sí, eso es cierto.
Okay, so which was your list of respondents, Mr. Garcia? The one in the spreadsheet, the one in the report, something else entirely?
No, la del informe.
But you just told me. Okay, understood. Let's move to the next tab, which is interviews database questions. So here, Mr. Schimper, if I could ask you to go to the left. Yeah, thanks. So here you've listed the answers that were provided to you from the survey questions, yes?
Sí.
There are a lot of blanks here. So it looks like a lot of the respondents just didn't answer a bunch of questions. Is that right?
Sí, hubo algunas respuestas que no contestaron porque el enfoque de las encuestas fue más en rentabilidad. Aprovechamos el momento del encuestamiento para hacer otras preguntas porque ya teníamos, digamos que la base de coordenador urbana para cubrir ese aspecto, pero el enfoque de las encuestas, como lo dijimos en la primera parte de nuestra presentación, era hacia la rentabilidad principalmente. Aquí algo que quiero adicionar es que pues, no sencillamente fuimos transparentes o somos transparentes con toda la información que tuvimos y la presentamos ahí para que tanto ustedes como los miembros del tribunal pudieran tener acceso a lo que nosotros vimos. Sencillamente por eso lo incluimos todo. Si de pronto no facilitó tu lectura, te pido disculpas, pero como dijimos en la primera parte de nuestra presentación, el enfoque de las entrevistas era más hacia la rentabilidad, que es una variable que no se encuentra libremente en el mercado.
The interviews were focused on profitability.
Y tasas de descuento.
Okay. Let's move to the right of the spreadsheet. Column L is IRR high-end hotel. If we scroll down, I see only 2 responses. You can keep scrolling down just to make sure that everyone sees it. Do you think that was a sufficient number of responses?
En las tasas de descuento que nosotros estamos referenciando nuestro informe escrito, no estaban hablando de hoteles. Y por eso es que está referenciado ahí, hace parte de una encuesta de un competidor que tenía esa información, la pusimos solo pues como referencia. Pero como usted puede ver en la K, hay una mayor cantidad de datos. Nosotros sabemos que entre más datos, más representatividad, y por eso nos enfocamos en nuestro informe a mostrar la información que era realmente relevante. Como le había dicho anteriormente, como no queremos, somos absolutamente transparentes con la información que tuvimos acceso, presentamos todo, pero realmente pues nuestro análisis de experto está enfocado a la información que mostramos en el informe.
Okay, Mr. Garcia. Let me take you to the 14th row of the spreadsheet. This is an unnamed respondent, like all of your respondents are, and there is absolutely no data presented for this respondent at all. Not a single piece. Is this another error?
No. Lo que pasó es que tuvimos la conversación y él nos pidió que no pusiéramos nada de sus datos. Entonces, por eso es que no puede aparecer como información ahí. Ni siquiera cuenta pues dentro de nuestros análisis, porque para ese proyecto nos pidió que no incluyéramos la información. Entonces, siendo respetuosos con esa instrucción, sencillamente no se incluyó.
Is that something you would have put in your notes column? You have a notes column on the spreadsheet, right? You can scroll all the way up.
Posiblemente era necesario ponerlo en esa columna para esa observación. Estoy de acuerdo con usted.
Okay. So there were a few oversights while you were preparing the spreadsheet that served as the main source for a number of your estimates, correct?
¿Me puede repetir la pregunta, por favor?
I was just commenting on the fact that it looked like there were a couple of errors and oversights, maybe minor typos and things like that in the spreadsheet that served as the source for your report.
Posiblemente. Pero no fueron voluntarios. Si hubo un error, no fue voluntario.
Absolutely, that makes sense. How long did you have to prepare your report?
Como un mes y medio. Un mes, más o menos. Un mes y medio.
Okay. Let's go to your report, page 37. Okay. Now, this is a bar graph where you provide the sales absorption by city, correct?
Correcto.
And the only source you cite here is CBRE 09?
Correcto.
That was the spreadsheet we were just looking at, right?
Correcto.
Let's go back to that spreadsheet. Could you please scroll all the way and then up? Thank you. Now there are two columns here that set out the sales absorption, which is the units sold per month. There's a minimum in column E and a maximum in column F. Do you see that?
Lo veo.
Let's go to the third row down, which is a merged cell, and it's for Medellin. Do you see the sales absorption figures that you've listed there? There's 4 and 15, and 5 and 15 in the minimum and maximum columns, respectively.
Lo veo.
Okay. And if we scroll down further, we see Medellin has 2 and 3 in row 10. Yes. And 3 and 5 in row 12. Is that correct?
De acuerdo.
And then we go all the way down to row 24, and we see 1.4 and 2 for the minimum and maximum, respectively. Do you see that?
Lo veo.
Okay. Let's go back to your report, page 37. The sales absorption figure here is 1.4 reported.
De acuerdo.
That was the minimum sales absorption figure that was provided to you in the surveys.
Aquí quiero mencionar algo, y es que precisamente como dice el título fue a nuestro título personal, según lo que vimos de la encuesta, cuáles son los proyectos más relevantes. El proyecto más relevante, y aquí la noción mínimo, entiendo el punto, que pues podría ser lo más pequeño, porque eso es la definición de mínimo, pero para este caso, y pues es necesario mencionarlo, lo que se mostraba era el promedio de ventas de largo plazo. El título de ahí, para este caso, no puede llevar a que uno piense que sencillamente se escogió de manera ad hoc el mínimo, pero en esta tabla lo que estaban mostrando era los proyectos más relevantes dentro de lo que nos contestaron los encuestados, los que podrían parecerse más al proyecto, cuál era el nivel de ventas esperado por mes. Pues que son datos que se encuentran en la misma muestra, que van en función pues de lo que nosotros vemos que podría ser la segmentación de ese tipo de proyectos, o sea, lo más comparable, y pues de ahí escogimos lo que realmente era representativo. Y por eso está ese dato ahí.
Let me see if I can understand. Are you saying that the source here is incorrectly listed? Is it not CBRE 09 from where you selected this data?
No dije eso.
Okay, so it is CBRE 09 from where you got this data. So,
Sí.
So you're just saying that the most relevant response provided to you just also happened to be the lowest.
No, eso no es lo que dije. Lo que digo aquí es que se está mostrando la absorción de ventas de los proyectos más relevantes de ese segmento por cada ciudad según nuestra muestra. Eso es lo que dije.
Okay, Mr. Garcia, maybe others will understand that better than I did. Let's go back to the spreadsheet. Let's look at Cartagena next. So if we go to row 8, here the sales absorption is 15 and 20 respectively. You see that?
Sí, y también veo el precio promedio y eso no es el proyecto más relevante de ese segmento. Entonces no es representativo. Algo que hay que aclarar, no sé, pues es que el segmento de más altas especificaciones es menos líquido, se vende menos. Y pues en toda la búsqueda de datos que tuvimos encontramos este proyecto. Acá pues estamos solo utilizando la referencia de rentabilidad, que eso es más o menos estable. Este proyecto no es el más relevante para definir esa muestra, por eso no lo incluimos dentro de la otra tabla que mostramos anteriormente.
Understood, Mr. Garcia. So you're saying this was not relevant. It just happened to have the highest figures, but it's also not relevant. Is that what you're saying?
Sí, estoy diciendo que ese no es el más representativo. Eso es lo que estoy diciendo. Independientemente de los datos, no es el más representativo.
Okay.
Y pues, sí, eso es lo que estoy diciendo.
Okay, so the most representative one, according to you, happens to be, I believe, the data provided at row 34. Of 2?
Sí.
I don't see any other metrics that you were talking about. I don't see the profitability or the prices or anything else. How did you determine this was the most relevant? I don't even see notes here.
Era el más relevante por el nivel de ventas. Como le decía, era algo retador de la muestra que pudimos recoger. No todos los indicadores nos los pudieron proveer, incluimos los que efectivamente nos provieron. No es un censo, sencillamente es una muestra. Y pues en la libertad de respuesta de cada uno de los que respondieron, pues, el único dato que nos pudieron libremente dar fue el de la venta para ese proyecto. No pasó en todos los casos, solo para ese proyecto, por ejemplo. Pero esa no fue la única fuente de datos que utilizamos.
I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to how you determined that this was the most relevant when you don't list any other piece of data about this survey sample.
Lo único que estábamos mostrando ahí era la velocidad de ventas y pues es consistente que solo estamos mostrando los datos de velocidad de ventas.
The speed of sales data that you think is most relevant. Also the lowest. Yes?
¿Me repite la pregunta?
That's okay. I don't think we need to keep going on this. Let's discuss some of your price estimates. Now, you said you relied on Kamakol as a database, yes?
Sí.
And you extracted average prices from that database, yes?
Sí.
For certain strata for each of the projects?
Sí.
And there are 6 strata?
Sí.
The higher the strata, the more luxurious, the more exclusive the project?
Típicamente.
And so you chose strata 5 and above for the claimants projects? in general?
Sí.
Let's go to the report at page 17. Have you seen any pictures of the Luxay project?
Sí.
Have you been there?
He pasado por ahí. No me he alojado.
Would you describe it as a luxury project? Or at least a high-end project?
¿En qué momento del tiempo? Ahora.
Let's say 2017. As it was supposed to be developed, do you consider that it was meant to be a high-end project or a middle-tier project?
De gama alta.
Now here I see that for Luxay, you've taken prices from chemical for strata 3 and above. For the other projects, you took prices from strata 5 and above. I'm just confused as to why that is.
Le puedo explicar. En el caso de Guatapé, en el caso de Guatapé no existe un mercado consolidado de estratos 5 y 6. Ese no fue el único filtro que utilizamos. También utilizamos el filtro de precio, porque hay una relación directa entre el precio de las viviendas y en qué segmentos se ocupan. En el caso de Guatapé, la información que se podía encontrar en la base de datos en ese momento se podía filtrar pues, por esos criterios, y el promedio que se encontró fue el que se presenta en pantalla, el que en este momento está presentado en la pantalla. Entonces, para poder definir el análisis de datos, no solo se tomó el estrato, no solo, también se utilizó un criterio de segmentación por precio. Aquí utilizamos los dos para poder realmente definir cuál era la cantidad de datos que podíamos analizar para este mercado en ese momento del tiempo.
So are you telling me that there was no data for strata 5 and 6 projects in the chemical database? In Guatapé?
Sí, la información era limitada.
Okay, let's move on to the next page. Here too, you just use prices for strata 3 and above, correct?
De acuerdo.
Oh, sorry, this is still the Luxay. Let's move on to the next page. Okay. Actually, let's go to CBRE 08. This is the Comacall database. So if we go to column H, we filter, this is the regions, right?
¿Verdad?
And Guatapé is in Antioquia.
Así es.
Okay. And the city is Guatapé. That's in column H, I believe. Oh, sorry, J. And then if we go to the right, I believe it's Estrada.
Así es.
I see some Strata 5 projects there. Oh, I was just saying that I think it's column U is Strata, and I think I see some Strata 5 projects here. Do you see those two?
Los veo.
So there are some Strata 5 projects in the Comacol database.
Sí, pero puede que no hayan estado activos en el momento, en nuestro horizonte de tiempo de análisis. Ahí está toda la información de coordenada urbana entre 2021 y antes. Lo que nos pidieron hacer era que analizáramos los datos de 2017 en un momento del tiempo muy específico.
So if you didn't find any comparable projects in Comacol at that time, would it have been reasonable to look at another database?
Como por ejemplo,
For example, Galería Mobiliaria, which is what JLL used.
sí,
Okay.
y la vimos.
But you didn't report those figures here. Instead, you went down to Strata 3.
Sí, y por una razón puntual. Una fortaleza que vimos en la base de datos de Camacol era la cobertura. El número de municipios que encontrábamos en Antioquia era muy superior a lo que encontrábamos típicamente en Galería Inmobiliaria. Como queríamos hacer una identificación del mercado de Antioquia de manera más completa, por eso, en función pues, de esos datos disponibles, escogimos coordenada urbana como nuestra fuente primaria de información.
You chose it as your main source of information because coverage was high, and yet you were telling me that there were no comparable projects for Strata 5 and above in Guatapé. That doesn't seem consistent.
No, lo que de pronto me hice entender mal. Lo que yo dije es que no había mucha información de ese estrato en Guatapé en el momento.
At the point in time you were asked to analyze.
En el momento que
Okay.
pues,
Let's-
la fecha efectiva de valoración o fecha efectiva de análisis, si lo puedes decir así.
Okay, let's move on. Your price estimates for the projects that you provided were for multifamily, single family, and the land, yes? That's what you provided in your report.
Correcto.
Now, I'm not a real estate expert, but I have bought a house, and so just correct my understanding if I'm wrong, but single family generally means houses, right? A single family is living in a unit by itself, yes?
Correcto.
And multifamily is usually apartment blocks, right?
Sí.
Okay. Let's go to page 15. Now these are prices from Comacol for Cartagena, right? And we see here that the single family houses, which is that line in black, have prices that are about half as much as the prices for multifamily units. So your data was telling you that houses in Cartagena cost on average less than apartments, almost half as much. Did that seem odd to you when you saw that?
La referencia por metro cuadrado.
Understood, but houses are generally more expensive on a per meter basis, per meter squared basis. Wouldn't you agree?
No necesariamente.
Okay, let's go to page 13. This is the same data for Envigado, yes? And which is higher, single family or multifamily?
Para este momento del tiempo, para ese mercado, unifamiliar. Pero no veo la relación con el resto del mercado.
Okay, let's go to page 19. This is the Crystal Lakes project. Again, single family homes are more expensive than multifamily. Do you see that?
Lo veo.
So you're getting these results, and also I think on a common sense basis, we would assume that houses would be more expensive than apartments. But when you saw these figures on page 15 for Cartagena, that didn't raise an eyebrow.
No entiendo la relación. ¿Me repite la pregunta, por favor?
I'm just asking you that when you saw the data that you got on Cartagena, which is, I think, page 15, when you saw here that houses were almost half as expensive as apartments, that didn't raise an eyebrow. You didn't think that was odd, even though you were getting contrary results for other parts of the country, for other projects.
Lo que quiero decir es que no siempre ocurre la regularidad que usted me preguntó, que hay mercados en donde los proyectos de multifamily necesariamente tienen que ser más costosos, además porque se ofrecen más en el mercado y tienen un mayor nivel de demanda, a mayor demanda, mayor precio. Y eso es lo que nosotros podemos encontrar en la base de datos. Depende mucho del tipo de mercado y el tipo de activo que se ofrece.
Did you look at the underlying data?
Perdón, perdí eso.
Did you look at the underlying data? Did you go and check out what each of the units or each of the projects were to try to understand this discrepancy? Or this odd result?
Revisamos que el filtrado de la información fuera consistente. Es difícil hacer una definición de lo que podría haber sido la realidad del proyecto de manera visual yéndose hasta 2017. En ese momento teníamos que confiar en los datos que estábamos analizando porque pues era un análisis netamente numérico para este caso. Lo que lo que hicimos de manera revisada pues era que estuviéramos segmentando por los criterios que están ahí definidos de manera correcta y sobre eso hicimos los cálculos. Ahí quiero dar algo de contexto y es un tema importante pues con la presentación que nosotros vimos anteriormente para poder hacer una evaluación, y esto es algo absolutamente importante. Una parte es hacer una inspección. Nosotros nos basamos en lo que podemos efectivamente ver en el sitio y esa es la mayor fuente de información y de análisis que podemos tener, dado que es el hecho más objetivo. En el caso pues de los proyectos que se nos mencionaron que teníamos que revisar, pues yéndonos de manera objetiva a lo que nosotros podíamos ver en el sitio, pues dado que muchos no están construidos, nos tenemos que ir a la referencia como más normal que puede tener el mercado. Y así fue que lo hicimos.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia. Have you ever done a DCF for an undeveloped project, Mr. McGurry? Undeveloped, not in development.
Yes.
Thank you. That will be all from us.
Thank you. Will there be redirect?
I have just a question. I had anticipated when, in connection with JLL's presentation, that they had incorporated into the record pictures of a project and allocating it to a project, the case study that was mentioned by CBRE. I would just like CBRE to confirm whether the project to which you refer in your case study is the one to which JLL referred in their presentation?
No, it isn't.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Good.
I just want to clarify that the picture in that in JLL's presentation is not a picture of a project in the case study. It is a picture of a project that's in the Comical database that was used to arrive at a price which CBRE provided.
Sorry, is the picture, it's on page, I'm just trying to, it's on page 34 of JLL's presentation, and they say that CBRE's sample is BioCity grant straight up 5. Is that your case study? Have you referred to the BioCity grant in your presentation? Thank you.
Okay, so that related to
No.
BioCity grant. So it is, the picture does not show BioCity grant, or is it this one here? That one?
Yes. So JLL assigned a project and says this is CBRE's sample. And we assume they refer to the case study that that is shown on page 46 of CBRE's report.
Could we put it on screen? 46. But if there's agreement, then it's fine. I mean,
I just asked them to confirm
yes,
that these pictures here are not their case study.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No so much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have no further questions. Thank you for your expert testimony.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias a ustedes.
We best should now have our lunch break. Maybe again 45 minutes. Is that all right?
I think that should be okay, assuming PRG is ready to, they're here, right? Okay. Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay, so 1:30. Sorry, did I?
I just wanted to confirm with everybody, because I've spoken with some of you, that tomorrow The hearing can not go any longer than lunchtime. I've cancelled lunches because I'm sure you all want to eat outside, even though our food is wonderful. But just to be clear about that. Thank you.